G'day, it's Rusty from Rusty's Outback Adventures, and today's episode we're here at the Capital Aluminium, and we're here to buy all the aluminium we need to make the new roof rack I mentioned in the previous video. I'll just give you a quick look what we got here. There's the new rack I made in the previous video. There's our aluminium, 6.5 metre lengths, 6.5 metre lengths of box and angle iron, and we got the mesh here. The mesh is for the floor, and also the mesh barrier that goes around the angles in the back of the canopy. So yeah, that's step one. Step one is the pick up the aluminium, and then we'll head home and we'll start building the roof rack, which is to replace this steel one. And we'll play guess the weight of the roof rack. And you guys want to put your comments below. What do you think this mild steel rack weighs? It's 1900 long, it's 1250 wide. It's got 20mm box tube, 20mm round tube, and mesh on the floor. So yeah, we'll compare the weights as well. We'll work out what this one weighs, and then we'll work out the aluminium. So now that I've got the aluminium home, and I now need to take this rack off, and it's just a matter of undoing 4 sets of 2 bolts here, which fit across these bars. And it's a fairly heavy, as I said before, it's quite a heavy rack. And the easiest thing for me to do is to stick a chain block up there, and then we'll just drive the car under it, grab hold of it, back the vehicle out, and we'll put it on the ground. So now we've got the metal rack off the car's roof rack bars. I've now brought it into the shed here. Sitting here, I've got a set of bathroom scales. They're not the ones out the bathroom, the one I've got as a set I've got in the shed. So we've put it on, whatever you guys reckon it's going to weigh. I'll just point this camera down and show you what it weighs. There you go, 28 kilos. I was a little bit surprised. I thought it might have been a tad lighter than that, but don't knock it over. Yeah, so that's the rack as it is. So 28 kilos, you know, that's a fair bit of weight on the roof already. So now this rack is 1900 long, 1200 wide. I'm going to make the other one a bit big. I'm going to make it probably 2 meters long and go 1400 wide. The things I normally carry on this roof rack are, depending on whether we take the camper trailer with the quad bike on it, I need to find somewhere to put 2 spare tyres, and they normally go in the roof, go in the roof rack. And I've also got a couple of storage boxes, lightweight metal ones, and they carry some recovery gear in one, and in the other one I've usually got tent pegs and ropes and a hammer, those sort of things. The rest of the gear is in the camper trailer. So that's what goes on the roof. I'm also going to put the max tracks that I've just bought. They're going to go on the roof as well, on this roof rack. I'm still deciding how I'm going to make those fit, and I've got an idea to stand them up, and I'll just show you what I mean. Now these boxes are the ones I typically have up here on this roof rack, and there's room here. As you can see, there's a spare tyre goes here, and I got a spare tyre through there, and the little angle on the front here I guess helps with a bit of wind, and I've usually got a shovel poked in there. Now what I'm thinking of doing with the max tracks is probably moving these boxes, move the box down a bit, and just let me grab, I've got 2 sets here. I'm thinking of trying to make some way to stand these up here, and maybe put a rail behind so they actually stand up there rather than having them angled. I'm still not sure yet. If I lay them down, it takes up a lot of room. I don't want to put them in the canopy again, take a bit of room in there. If I lay them down, yeah, that's going to mean the floor space is taken up. So yeah, I'm still not 100% sure how I'm going to mount them. Well, following on from the look at the boxes and the old roof rack, here's a drawing that basically shows the length now I've made 2045 long, and it's 150 high, which is the same as the original one. And this represents the tyre. This represents that storage box I showed you earlier. And I've decided now, after much mucking around, I'm actually going to put the Max-Trax in the front of the rack. So, and I'm going to have a two-angled front on this. Instead of having the straight wind deflector, I'm actually going to have a little step up. Saves me a little bit of room. So that's sort of the side view. I've got a drawing here, shows the base, and this is, I've made it 1350 wide, it's 1245 long, and I made it 1245 because being aluminium, I'm using the aluminium security mesh. The way the mesh shape works, I can cut it at 1245 and it's between two of the little patterned shapes rather than having it cut halfway through. So that's the drawing. It's made out of 25mm square tube. There's Bill in the background. The top rail is 25mm round tube, and these uprights are 25x6 flat bar, and I'll space these out once I sort of get it worked out where the Max-Trax fits in here. Okay, so what I've also done too is I've laid out on the ground in my shed, and I'll just show you this, what I've done here. There's nothing better than a life-size model. So what I've done is I've drawn lines on the shed, and you can see these painted lines. They were old handball court on the floor from years ago, and the kids used to play in here. So these chalk lines down here represent, these chalk lines here, that represents the size. So that's 1245, 1350 wide. And as you can see, I've decided to put the Max-Trax at the front, and here where the upright comes, it'll actually come up and then at a 45-degree angle, and then it'll come back in. And the way to get these out is going to be, I'm going to have these sliding out. So they'll be locked in one end and you'll slide them out the other. So that's the storage box that I've got on the, that I carry. I don't always have to carry them, but I've sort of got provision to put these storage boxes in. I'm going to keep using them. And as you can see here, room for two tyres. So that's pretty much the final design. And now all I've got to do is, here's my aluminium material, is to pull the bandsaw out and get to starting to cut. So we'll do that now. So the material for the base is 2 lengths of 25 by 25 square tube at 2045. These 3 inner rails are 1995, and the 2 ends are 1300. So there's front and back 1300. So that's the material to start with. You can get an idea of what the rack looks like. So now it's a matter of just transferring all this to the welding table and TIGging it all together. Show you here on the bench, all the rails in place, so it's just just tack welded top and bottom. I've just got to go and do this. I'm just going to now go in here and do all these side welds, and that's easy if I just stand the frame up. And just a quick shout out to my friend Rob, who wanted to see some video on the aluminium TIG, so there you go, mate. Whenever you're welding a square or rectangular frame together, it's going to have a 90-degree corner on all four corners. So when you're welding it, you want to make sure it's square. So the best way to measure for squareness is to measure the diagonals when you've tacked it together. So what I've done here is, I'll just show you this drawing on the board. If you remember back to high school maths, the right angle triangle rule talks about the hypotenuse, which is the diagonal of any triangle, being the sum of the square of the other two sides. So basically what that means is, if we square the 1350, which is how wide our rack is, and if we add that to the square of the length, which is 2045, and then find the square root of that number, we'll actually work out what the diagonal is. So when you come to tack it on the bench, you run a tape measure across the diagonals, you'll actually know whether this thing is square. Okay, so working out this diagonal length, if we go to the formula, x, which is the diagonal, is the square root of the 1350 squared plus the 2045 squared, we get 1,822,500 plus 4,182,025. So if we add all that together, we get 6,004,525. Now if we take the square root of that, so the square root of that equals 2450.4, in this case millimeters. So that means that when we've laid our frame on the bench and we've tacked it together, that x, that diagonal, equals 2450. So if we measure that diagonal both ways and we get 2450, we know that frame is square. So it's just a quick calculation, quick check to make sure that it's all square before you fully weld it. The welds are completed. I've gone over and ground the edges of the weld just to get a bit flat. The next thing is to put the mesh on, and the mesh is not as wide as this is, so I'm going to have to put the mesh crossways. So just going to put a sheet on and just check the size, and then we can cut that, and then we can second piece on. Just grab this mesh. Now this mesh is 2400 by 1250. It's 7 mil thick, and it's the security mesh from Capital. Alright, so now two things I've learned about working with aluminium is A, it gets really hot, and B, it does warp a little bit, so hence all the clamps, and I've been welding. The idea being now is I've just run a felt pen underneath, and we'll just use that as our marker, so we know where to cut it. I just run a straight edge over this once I get it off. And sure whether to use the jigsaw or the grinder on this. Might be safer with a jigsaw. I've cut the mesh and I've laid it out on the frame, ready to go. All I need to do now is, as you can see here, these are the two mounting bolt holes that fit on the roof rack. Well, this piece is in the way, so because what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay a piece of, because this is 25 by 3 mil box, I'm worried that a bolt through there will actually try and squash it. So I'm going to lay a piece of 25 by 6 aluminium flat bar on the top. So what I need to do now is just go and mark these. So I've got to cut that bit out of there. Here's the second set of bolt holes again. This has got to be cut out of here. And on the corners, there'll be an upright in all these four corners. So that one's okay. I'll probably need to trim a little bit out of there. Probably need to cut some of that off there. Now these are the other holes. I've got to cut this piece out of here. That's the mounting holes on the front, and take that piece out of there. And down here, same again. So I just need to cut that piece out of there. That should be fine. I'll just round that piece of flat bar. All I've got to do now is I'll cut those pieces out, and that corner's got to come off. And then yeah, I can go ahead and weld all the mesh in place. Now the frame is made, it's all welded, the mesh is welded on as well, so that's the floor for the roof rack. The next thing I need to do is work out the front section where the max tracks are going to go, and I've got them here. And the idea is they're going to here, and obviously with both sets together, so they'll slide in and out as a unit. And what I've got to do, I'll just bring the camera around here. So with the tracks on the front section, I've got to build. The original one had an angle on the front with a wind deflector. Well, I want to do something similar, but I'm going to have to do it in two stages. I'm going to have to sort of come up here, across, and then come across as the top, and then this will be where the wind deflector will be in two parts. Then through here somewhere there'll be an upright which will support these. So the next thing I've got to do is just design this little double 45 to get around here. So that'll be the next little thing to make, and I'll just take some measurements off this now. Now I showed you this drawing before, which is the side view of how I'm going to lay out typically what goes in this roof rack. Now I said I've got room for a spare tyre, I've got room for a box that I showed you before, and this front section here I'm going to put the max, is where I've decided to put the max tracks in. So I just wanted to show you this calculation here, and if I refer you to this drawing here, this is basically that whole section. So what I've done is I've worked out the angle I need to cut these little uprights. So there's a little upright here. This is all made out of 25 by 3 square aluminium tubing, and that upright has got a cut at 36 degrees. Then this is one piece of flat bar, which is 25 by 6 alley flat bar. Put a bend in it at 125 mil, and I've just allowed 3 mil for the bend, because when you bend anything you do use a little bit of the length. So this then comes back here. So this upright is 350 mil from the inside edge of this front piece to this upright here, and the reason I've allowed it to be 350 is because the max tracks measure at the moment 330 mil wide. Now it doesn't mean that I'm always going to run max tracks. It might mean that, you know, in the future you might buy something else and they could be a little bit wider or a little bit narrower. And the same with the height. This internal height to the center of this 6 mil flat bar from the top here is 150 mil. Now these stack of 4 max tracks presently measure 130 mil, and again, if you bought a different track, it could vary the height slightly. Now you have to remember too that sitting in the bottom on top of this here is actually a 7 mil thick security mesh. So this is where the max tracks fits, and I'll just show you how we've actually got it half built at the moment. Now this is the upright I showed you. It measures 72 mil on this side. It's been cut at a 36 degree angle, which is what I calculated would fit. This piece of flat bar is 25 by 6, comes back to an upright, and I said that internal dimension is 350 and the internal height's 150 less the 7mm for this thickness of the security mesh, and I guess you could take 3mm off that because it was 150 to the centre, so you've taken 10mm off. So effectively I've got 140 in there, and that gives me a little bit of room to put the max tracks in. So we've got this 25mm round bar here, so this is what these weld into, and the upright in the corner, and all I'll do here is I'll put a piece of flat bar in there and a piece in there and a piece in here. What that'll do is it'll stop the max tracks sliding back. They can't slide forward because I'll hit here, and when I've finished, this edge will actually have a wind deflector that'll come up here and follow this curve to this top point. So I'll need to get that bent externally. One of the local sheet metal places will be able to do that for me. So I'll just show you how it looks with the max tracks in. So if I push them all the way in, that's where that max tracks will sit. They'll sit in there, and I plan to run a strap sort of up through here across and strap them in place, and then it means we can also attach some sort of plastic coated wire rope with a lock around it so no one can knock them off. Also thinking the other end we might make it so we fill in this end, fill in one end, so either put some security mesh or something on one end so they only get pulled out from one side. I'm not sure about yet, I'm still thinking what I might do. So that's how they sit. That's the frame tacked up, and I need to get on, and once we finish that we need to put the side rail around the sides and the back. So that's the next thing, once I've finished welding all these in place. See now the roof rack is all made and it's all welded together. Really happy with the way it came out. I've still got to put this front wind deflector on, and I'll need to get that bent up in a local sheet metal place. But in the meantime I'm keen to put it on the car. So I'll just show you how it looks now with the max tracks going in. Okay, so these are the four together. They slide in there. Now what I intend to use is a couple of these 100 kilo straps with the little serrated teeth on them, and the idea being I'll just feed that through here and back up the other side and just run that in there, and that'll be just a way to hold it in place. And I'll put a couple of those on, and then some sort of plastic coated steel wire and loop it around here and lock it on. So yeah, that's the way it all goes together. Now the moment of truth time is going to put it in the scales and we'll weigh it. And we got 20 kilos. A little bit more than I probably would hope for, but like I said, this is a much bigger roof rack than the previous one, so I guess there's more material in this one. Alright, let's get it on the car and see how it fits. Now, like I said, it weighed 20 kilos. The original one weighed 28. I'm not unhappy with the weight. This is a much bigger rack. It's both longer and wider. I enjoyed building it. It's the first time I've really made anything in aluminium, so it was a good exercise in getting my TIG welder out. We'll be out there soon. Fortunately, we're in WA. We're in a lockdown at the moment for 5 days, so that's probably put a bit of a kibosh on our upcoming plan for next weekend. But that's okay, we'll be out there in a couple of weeks where we can actually do a solid review of this. So if you enjoyed the video, a thumbs up would be appreciated. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, subscribe button's down here, and if you give the bell icon a ring, you'll be notified of upcoming videos. We've got a few coming up, and yeah, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.